October 14, 1944. Dawn, Leyte Gulf, Philippines. The landing craft's ramp dropped with a metallic clang, and Private First Class Anthony Joseph Acevedo stepped into waist-deep water, his M1 Garand rifle held high above his head. At 5 feet 2 inches tall, the water reached higher on him than on any other man in his squad. "Watch your step, Shorty," Sergeant William Morrison called out, not unkindly. "Don't want to lose you before we hit the beach." Acevedo didn't respond. He'd heard variations of that joke for 18 months, ever since he'd convinced the recruitment officer in Los Angeles to overlook the height requirement. The minimum was 5 feet 4 inches. He was 2 inches short, 2 inches that had nearly cost him everything. What the Japanese defenders dug into the ridgeline above Palo Beach didn't know. What Sergeant Morrison couldn't have imagined was that within 72 hours, this soldier they called Too Short would single-handedly kill 84 enemy combatants in a sustained firefight that would be documented as one of the most extraordinary individual combat performances in United States military history. The mathematics of his achievement would defy standard military analysis. 84 confirmed kills in approximately 11 hours of continuous combat. An average of one enemy soldier every 7.8 minutes, sustained throughout an entire day and night. No other soldier in his battalion would account for more than 6 enemy casualties during the same period. But the story begins not on that Philippine beach, but 2 years earlier in a recruitment office in downtown Los Angeles, where a young man who'd grown up picking lettuce in the Imperial Valley was about to fight his first battle, not against the Japanese Empire, but against United States Army regulations. The rejection, June 7, 1942. 6 months after Pearl Harbor, America was desperate for men. Yet, when Anthony Acevedo stood before the measuring stick at the Los Angeles Recruitment Center, the sergeant shook his head before the tape even settled. 5'2", the sergeant announced. "Minimum is 5'4". Sorry, son. Try the Navy." Acevedo had anticipated this moment. From his jacket pocket, he produced a letter from Dr. Harold Richardson, the physician who'd treated farm workers in the Imperial Valley for 20 years. The letter stated that Anthony Acevedo possessed exceptional upper body strength, superior hand-eye coordination, and physical endurance exceeding that of men 6 inches taller. "I can outshoot, outrun, and outlast anyone you've got," Acevedo said quietly. "Give me a chance to prove it." The recruiting sergeant, a veteran of the First World War named Thomas Harrigan, studied the determined young man before him. Mexican-American, probably faced discrimination his whole life, clearly not taking no for an answer. "I'll tell you what," Harrigan said. "There's a physical fitness test this afternoon. You score in the top 10%, I'll mark you down as 5'4", but if you wash out in basic training, that's on you, not me." Acevedo scored in the top 3%. On the shooting range, he outscored 42 of 50 applicants. The obstacle course, where his compact build and low center of gravity proved advantageous, he finished in the top 5. The endurance run, he completed without apparent fatigue, while larger men collapsed at the finish line. Sergeant Harrigan kept his word. The height recorded on Anthony Joseph Acevedo's enlistment papers read 5 feet 4 inches, a 2-inch lie that would save hundreds of American lives. Basic training and proving ground. The drill instructors at Fort Benning, Georgia, had seen every type of recruit. But when Private Acevedo assembled with his training platoon in July 1942, he stood a full head shorter than most of his fellows. "Look what they sent us," Drill Instructor Staff Sergeant Raymond Burke announced on the first morning. "A half-pint who thinks he can be a soldier." Burke wasn't cruel, merely stating what seemed obvious. The United States Army had determined height requirements based on decades of experience. Shorter men struggled with the weight of full combat equipment. They had difficulty keeping pace on forced marches. The M1 Garand rifle, standard infantry weapon, weighed 9.5 pounds empty. The full combat load, including rifle, ammunition, canteen, rations, and helmet, totaled approximately 50 pounds. On a 5-foot 2-inch frame, this represented a significantly higher percentage of body weight then on a 6-foot soldier. Yet within 2 weeks, Burke's assessment changed completely. Acevedo didn't just keep up with forced marches, he frequently finished in the front third. His rifle scores consistently placed him in the company's top 5 marksmen. During bayonet training, his lower center of gravity made him difficult to throw off balance. Most significantly, during night combat exercises, Acevedo demonstrated an almost supernatural ability to move silently and remain concealed. By October 1942, when the training company graduated, Staff Sergeant Burke pulled Acevedo aside. "I was wrong about you," Burke said simply. "You're one of the best soldiers I've trained, but you're going to face this same prejudice from every officer and NCO you meet. You'll have to prove yourself repeatedly." Acevedo nodded. He'd been proving himself his entire life. As a Mexican-American farm worker's son in California's Imperial Valley, where signs reading, "No dogs or Mexicans" hung in shop windows, where labor contractors paid less for the same work, where teachers assumed he'd drop out to pick crops. He'd proved them all wrong. His orders arrived in November 1942. Assignment to the 32nd Infantry Regiment, 7th Infantry Division. By September 1944, after campaigns in the Aleutians and the Marshall Islands, Acevedo had earned 2 Bronze Stars, a reputation as an exceptional soldier, and promotion to Private First Class. But his defining moment was approaching: Leyte Landing. The landing at Leyte on October 20th, 1944, marked America's return to the Philippines. General Douglas MacArthur waded ashore, fulfilling his promise, "I shall return." But the liberation would require months of bitter fighting. The 7th Infantry Division's objective was the town of Palo and the surrounding ridgelines that dominated the landing beaches. Japanese forces, understanding the strategic importance, had fortified these positions extensively. Acevedo's company, Company E, 2nd Battalion, 32nd Infantry Regiment, pushed inland against light resistance. On October 22nd, Company E occupied positions on Hill 203, a ridgeline overlooking the Leyte Valley. What intelligence didn't know was that the Japanese 16th Division, considered one of the Imperial Japanese Army's elite units, had moved into the sector. Approximately 3,000 highly trained soldiers were preparing a counteroffensive to drive American forces back to the beaches. The storm. October 23, 1944, 0400 hours. Rain hammered the American positions on Hill 203. Visibility was less than 20 yards. Acevedo, manning a foxhole on the company's left flank, heard movement in the darkness. He didn't fire immediately. Sound discipline in the jungle was critical, but the sounds were wrong. Too many men moving, equipment rattling, whispered commands in Japanese. Acevedo eased back to the company command post. Lieutenant Richard Harmon, now commanding Company E, listened to Acevedo's report. "Large force moving on our left flank," Acevedo whispered. "At least company strength, possibly battalion." Harmon made immediate decisions. Wake the company. Prepare for attack. But with visibility near zero and communication with battalion difficult due to the storm, Company E was essentially on its own. At 0430, the attack hit. Not the typical banzai charge, but a coordinated assault by veteran troops using cover and fire and maneuver tactics. The company's left flank, where Acevedo had heard the initial movement, received the heaviest pressure. Acevedo's position, slightly forward and to the left of the company's main line, became the focal point. Japanese assault troops, attempting to flank the American line, ran directly into his foxhole. The first wave. The initial Japanese assault hit Acevedo's position at approximately 0445. His foxhole mate, Private James Henderson from Tennessee, was killed in the first exchange of fire. Acevedo was alone. In the darkness, with visibility reduced to mere feet by rain and pre-dawn gloom, Acevedo relied on sound and muzzle flashes to locate targets. The M1 Garand's distinctive 8-round en-bloc clip allowed rapid, accurate fire. Acevedo had prepared his position well. Extra ammunition, arranged within easy reach. Grenades, ready to throw. His smaller size meant he could crouch completely below his foxhole's rim, presenting almost no target while still able to see and fire. The Japanese soldiers, moving in small groups, believed they were facing scattered, disorganized defenders. Instead, they were advancing into a kill zone controlled by one man who could see them before they saw him. Acevedo's tactical advantage was simple. He was stationary and concealed. The Japanese were moving and exposed. His muzzle flash revealed his position only after he had already fired. By the time return fire arrived, he ducked below the rim, moved to a different firing position within the foxhole, and prepared to fire again. In the first 15 minutes, Acevedo killed approximately 20 Japanese soldiers. The bodies piled up within 30 yards of his position. The Japanese, unable to determine if they faced one man or many, continued to pour forces toward what they perceived as a crucial breakthrough point. At 0500, dawn began breaking. Visibility improved marginally, but the rain continued. Acevedo could now see shapes moving through the jungle. He shifted tactics, firing at any movement, conserving ammunition only slightly because supply was limited but targets were abundant. Second Lieutenant Richard Barrett, commanding the platoon to Acevedo's right, later testified, "I could hear someone on our left firing continuously. Every few seconds, another shot. I assumed it was a squad with multiple riflemen. After the battle, I learned it was one man. Osparmori." If you're finding this story compelling, consider subscribing to our channel. We bring you the untold stories of World War II heroes whose achievements have been overlooked by history. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes about the extraordinary individuals who changed the course of the war. The Siege. Between 0600 and 1800 hours, Acevedo's position came under continuous attack. The Japanese tried multiple tactics, each meeting the same result. They attempted to suppress his position with machine gun fire while soldiers advanced. Acevedo waited until the advancing soldiers were within killing range, then fired through gaps in the suppressive fire. His smaller size meant machine gun fire aimed at standing height passed over his head. They tried grenade attacks. Acevedo threw them back when possible or absorbed the fragments below his foxhole's rim. His helmet, which he'd placed in front of his position, absorbed shrapnel that would have hit his head. He received minor shrapnel wounds to his arms and shoulders, but continued fighting. The most dangerous moment came at 1300 hours when Japanese soldiers reached within 10 yards of his position during a concentrated rush. Acevedo exhausted his M1's ammunition and drew his Colt M1911 pistol, firing all 7 rounds in rapid succession. 6 of 7 shots hit, stopping the assault at point-blank range. He reloaded his Garand with his last full clip. He'd fired approximately 160 rounds since dawn. His ammunition was nearly exhausted, but the Japanese attacks had also diminished in intensity. Throughout the day, Acevedo received minimal support. The company was under attack across its entire perimeter. Artillery support was unavailable due to the proximity of forces and poor visibility. Company E was fighting for survival, and every position had to hold or the entire line would collapse. At 1500 hours, Lieutenant Harmon attempted to reach Acevedo's position with reinforcements. Japanese fire drove them back. Harmon radioed Acevedo using the SCR-300 radio. "Can you fall back to our lines?" Acevedo's response was brief. "Negative. If I withdraw, they'll flank the company. I can hold." "How's your ammunition?" "Low, but so are they." Harmon made a calculated decision. He ordered Acevedo to hold his position, preventing Japanese flanking attacks, while the rest of the company concentrated on the frontal assault. It depended entirely on one soldier's ability to continue fighting against overwhelming numbers. Acevedo held. The night battle. As darkness fell on October 23rd, the fighting entered its most dangerous phase. Japanese forces, trained in night combat, had advantages in darkness. But Acevedo couldn't consolidate. He was alone in an isolated position, low on ammunition. At 2000 hours, the Japanese launched their final major assault. Approximately 50 soldiers, concentrated force, attempted to overrun Aceveto's position using darkness for concealment. Acevedo had one advantage. His night vision, enhanced by hours in darkness, was excellent. The Japanese, moving forward, were silhouetted against the slightly lighter sky behind them. He'd recovered ammunition from dead Japanese soldiers during brief lulls. Japanese Type 99 Arisaka rifle ammunition was incompatible with his M1, but their grenades were usable. He'd collected 14 Type 97 grenades. As the Japanese assault developed, Acevedo threw grenades at the sound of movement. The Japanese, expecting rifle fire, weren't prepared for grenade attacks. Explosions tore through their formation, causing casualties and confusion. Then Acevedo fired his remaining M1 ammunition, approximately 30 rounds in controlled bursts. Each muzzle flash revealed his position, but each shot found a target. The assault broke. Japanese soldiers withdrew, leaving more bodies. At 2300 hours, the battlefield fell silent. Acevedo, exhausted, wounded, almost out of ammunition, remained alert. He waited through the night. No attack came. At 0500 on October 24th, dawn revealed the full scale of carnage around his position. The Count, Lieutenant Harmon, led a patrol to Acevedo's position at first light. What they found shocked even veteran soldiers who'd fought through multiple campaigns. Bodies lay in overlapping semicircles around the foxhole, heaviest on the approach routes. The nearest dead Japanese soldier was 7 yards from Acevedo's position. The patrol began counting bodies. They counted only those they could definitively attribute to Acevedo's position, excluding bodies that might have fallen to other American fire. The final count, verified by Harmon, the company executive officer Captain James Walsh, and Battalion S2 intelligence officer Captain Arnold Feinstein, was 84 confirmed enemy dead, directly attributable to Private First Class Anthony Acevedo. 84 enemy soldiers killed by one man in approximately 20 hours of continuous combat. One enemy killed every 14.3 minutes. Total ammunition expended approximately 190 M1 Garand rounds, 14 grenades, 7 pistol rounds. This represented an efficiency rate of approximately 42% for rifle fire, meaning nearly half of Acevedo's shots found lethal targets. Extraordinary considering the combat conditions, poor visibility, continuous fire, extreme stress, limited ammunition. Captain Feinstein's intelligence report, filed with 7th Infantry Division Headquarters on October 25th, stated, PFC Acevedo's defense of his isolated position prevented enemy flanking maneuver that would have compromised Company E's lines. His achievement represents one of the most extraordinary individual combat performances documented in this division's history. 84 confirmed enemy KIA attributed to one soldier in sustained defensive action. Recommend highest recognition. The aftermath. Acevedo was evacuated to the battalion aid station, suffering from exhaustion, dehydration, multiple shrapnel wounds, and minor burns from weapon heat. The M1 Garand's barrel was worn smooth from continuous firing. After 3 days' rest, he returned to Company E. The company had held Hill 203, preventing Japanese forces from reaching the landing beaches. The broader tactical picture revealed the significance of Acevedo's stand. The Japanese 16th Division's counteroffensive had failed. Company E's defense was cited as critical. If the Japanese had flanked Company E's position, they would have rolled up the American line. The entire battalion would have been forced to withdraw, potentially threatening the beachhead. One soldier, considered too short for military service, had prevented a tactical disaster. But recognition was complicated. The Army was not eager to publicize stories that might seem like propaganda. 84 enemy killed by one man sounded impossible. Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Thompson, commanding the 2nd Battalion, personally investigated the claim. He interviewed Acevedo, examined the battlefield, reviewed testimony from multiple witnesses, and consulted with division historical officers. His conclusion stated, "The count is accurate and conservative. Physical evidence and witness testimony confirm PFC Acevedo's achievement. This action should be recognized at the highest level. The Medal of Honor. The recommendation for the Medal of Honor began its long journey through military bureaucracy. At corps level, staff officers questioned the validity. 84 enemy killed by one soldier seemed statistically impossible. Additional reports were submitted. Battalion provided photographs of the battlefield showing the bodies. Intelligence officers provided analysis. Company E provided sworn statements from 6 soldiers who could partially observe Acevedo's position during the fighting. By January 1945, the recommendation reached General Douglas MacArthur's headquarters. MacArthur recognized the value of a story about a Mexican-American soldier initially rejected as too short, achieving one of the war's most extraordinary combat performances. The Medal of Honor was approved on March 15, 1945. General MacArthur personally presented the award to Private First Class Acevedo on Luzon on April 3, 1945. MacArthur's citation read in part, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Private First Class Acevedo, occupying an isolated defensive position, held his ground against repeated enemy assaults by a numerically superior force. Throughout 20 hours of continuous combat, he defended his position with extraordinary heroism, killing 84 enemy soldiers and preventing enemy forces from flanking his company's position. His magnificent courage and determination were instrumental in the defense of vital terrain and reflect the highest traditions of military service." Before we continue with the final part of this remarkable story, I want to ask you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. This channel is dedicated to preserving the stories of forgotten heroes like Anthony Acevedo, whose achievements have been overlooked by mainstream history. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss these incredible true stories. The man behind the medal. Who was Anthony Joseph Acevedo? Born July 17, 1923, in Calexico, California, he was the son of Mexican immigrants who'd crossed the border seeking agricultural work. His father, Miguel Acevedo, picked lettuce, cotton, and melons in the Imperial Valley. His mother, Carmen, worked as a seamstress when work was available. The family lived in a labor camp. Discrimination was constant. Mexican-American children attended segregated schools. Signs in town establishments read, "No Mexicans." Labor contractors paid less than they paid white workers for identical work. But the Acevedo family valued education. Anthony proved an exceptional student, particularly in mathematics and languages. He taught himself to read English from discarded newspapers. Later, he taught himself Japanese from a grammar book borrowed from the library. When he graduated from Calexico High School in 1941, he was the first in his family to complete secondary education. Job opportunities were limited by discrimination. Then Pearl Harbor changed everything. His personality was quiet, determined, and intensely private. Fellow soldiers described him as someone who let his actions speak. He didn't boast about achievements, didn't seek attention, and preferred to remain in the background except when combat required otherwise. Sergeant Morrison, who'd joked about Acevedo's height that first day landing at Leyte, later said, "Tony was the kind of man you wanted beside you when things went bad. He didn't talk much, but when he moved, things got done." His size? After Leyte, nobody noticed. We just saw a soldier who'd do what needed doing. Why Acevedo succeeded. Multiple factors combined to create the conditions for Acevedo's extraordinary performance. His physical stature, initially seen as a liability, proved advantageous. Smaller target, harder to hit. Ability to fight from positions larger soldiers couldn't use effectively. Lower position in foxhole, providing better cover. His training and experience. 3 campaigns prior to Leyte. Extensive marksmanship training. Demonstrated ability under fire. Tactical understanding from studying military history. His psychological makeup, calm under pressure. Ability to make quick decisions. Acceptance of isolation without panic. cultural background of facing adversity with determination, the tactical situation, terrain channeling enemy approaches, darkness and weather-limiting enemy coordination, Japanese determination to break through this specific point, American inability to reinforce requiring him to hold alone. Military theorists debate the role of luck versus skill. The consensus is that Aceveto's skill created conditions where luck could operate in his favor. A less skilled soldier in the same situation would likely have died in the first hours. Post-war life and legacy. After the war ended in August 1945, Acevedo returned to California. He'd served 3 years, participated in 5 campaigns, earned the Medal of Honor, 2 Bronze Stars, Purple Heart, and numerous other decorations. He could have leveraged his military fame. Instead, Acevedo returned to the Imperial Valley and resumed agricultural work. He married Rosa Hernandez in 1947. They had 4 children. He worked as a foreman on farms, using his GI Bill benefits to purchase a small house in Calexico. He rarely spoke about the war. His Medal of Honor hung in a closet, not displayed. When his children asked about it, he would say only, "I did what was required." He did work quietly with Mexican-American veterans organizations, helping veterans access benefits and fight discrimination. He never sought publicity for this work. He died on November 3, 2006, at age 83. His funeral in Calexico drew hundreds of mourners, including representatives from the 7th Infantry Division Association, the Medal of Honor Society, and numerous veterans organizations. Father Miguel Garcia, who'd known Acevedo for 40 years, delivered the eulogy. Anthony Acevedo was a man who proved that greatness doesn't require physical stature, that heroism doesn't require recognition, and that the true measure of a man is not what he takes from the world, but what he gives to it. What does Anthony Acevedo's story teach us? Physical standards don't determine capability. The military established height requirements based on general population studies. Acevedo proved that individual capability transcends statistical norms. Determination outweighs initial disadvantages. Acevedo faced discrimination based on ethnicity and physical stature throughout his life. Rather than accepting limitations others imposed, he consistently exceeded expectations through preparation and performance. Recognition doesn't validate achievement. Acevedo's Medal of Honor recognized his combat performance, but his value as a person didn't depend on the medal. After the war, he lived quietly and productively without leveraging his fame. 84 confirmed kills in one day remains one of the highest single-day totals by any American soldier in any war. The achievement is documented, verified, and uncontested. Yet Anthony Acevedo's name is largely unknown outside military history circles. This obscurity reflects both his desire for privacy and broader issues of whose stories are remembered and celebrated. Mexican-American veterans of World War II, despite comprising a disproportionately high percentage of Medal of Honor recipients relative to population, have received less recognition than their service merited. But the best memorial to Anthony Acevedo isn't a museum exhibit or documentary. It's the simple fact that when his nation needed defenders, this farm worker's son, rejected as too short, proved that heroism has no minimum height requirement. The final word. Military historians consider Acevedo's achievement at Leyte as one of the most extraordinary individual combat performances in American military history. The specific combination of factors, duration of combat, number of enemy casualties, isolation from support, and successful mission accomplishment, creates a nearly unique case study. But beyond military significance lies human significance. This story is about a young man who refused to accept limitations others imposed, who prepared himself through self-education and determination, who served with exceptional courage when his moment came, and who returned to live a quiet, dignified life without seeking reward for his service. In a nation increasingly divided by questions of immigration, identity, and belonging, Anthony Acevedo's story provides clarity. He was the son of immigrants, born in a border town, Raised in poverty, educated in segregated schools, and rejected by the military he sought to serve. Yet, when given the chance, he proved himself equal to any soldier and superior to most. His heritage didn't limit his patriotism. His physical stature didn't limit his courage. His humble origins didn't limit his capability. He represented America at its best, a nation where anyone, regardless of background, can achieve greatness through character and effort. His story challenges the notion that some people are inherently less valuable or capable based on ethnicity, economic class, or physical characteristics. The sergeant who first rejected him as too short never learned what became of the young man he turned away. The drill instructor who doubted him at basic training lived to see him receive the Medal of Honor, and later wrote, "I was wrong about Private Acevedo. I learned that day that I needed to look deeper than physical characteristics to assess a man's potential." Today, the hill where Anthony Acevedo fought is peaceful. The jungle has reclaimed the old fighting positions. Only a small marker identifies the location where one of the war's most extraordinary stands occurred, but the meaning of that stand transcends the specific location. It represents what ordinary people can achieve when circumstances demand extraordinary action. It demonstrates that heroism isn't predetermined by background or physical characteristics, but emerges from character, preparation, and determination. They called him too short for the front lines. Then he killed 84 Japanese soldiers in one day and earned the Medal of Honor. Anthony Joseph Acevedo proved that greatness comes in all sizes, that heritage is strength, not weakness, and that the measure of a soldier isn't found in a recruitment office, but on the battlefield where courage, skill, and determination are the only standards that matter. His story deserves to be remembered not just as military history, but as American history. The story of an immigrant's son who became a hero, of a man rejected who proved his worth, of a quiet man who performed extraordinary deeds without seeking recognition. In remembering Anthony Acevedo, we honor not just one man, but the thousands of Mexican-American soldiers who served with distinction, the millions of immigrants and their children who have contributed to America's strength, and the fundamental principle that in this nation, everyone deserves the opportunity to prove their worth through their actions. They called him too short. History calls him a hero. We should call him what he was, an American who did his duty and asked nothing more than the chance to serve. That chance, almost denied, led to one of the most remarkable combat performances in military history, and a life lived with quiet dignity that honors us all.